Good day, all, and thank you so much for joining in with the C.H.L.M.S Medi-Helpz Foundation, Day 12. We will be starting shortly. I am just waiting for LinkedIn to link up with StreamYard with Facebook, and then we will be going ahead and starting. So before we start, I just wanted to take the time to say thank you. So it does appear that we will be getting started now. It appears that everything is synced up. I am Sandra L. Washington, and for those that are watching that do not know, I am the founder of the C.H.L.M.S Medi-Helpz Foundation. C.H.L.M.S is C.H.L.M.S. That acronym stands for my grandmothers, were both Christopher and Henrietta. Their middle name, both my paternal and my maternal grandmother's middle name was Louise. The M stands for Mary. I had to include her in the naming of the nonprofit. And the reason being is that, you know what? She birthed a man. I'm not going to tell how old he is, but she birthed a man who grew into, she birthed a boy who grew into a man who makes sure that as an African American male, he's on point, who makes sure that not only is he taken care of, but that his wife is taken care of, and our son is also taken care of. He does the most. And then on top of that, he goes outside in the community and is doing stuff in the community. So when I'm thinking of, okay, well, what do I name the organization? I had to give my mother-in-law credit. I had to include her in the name of those ancestors of mine whose shoulders I stand on as I go forth into the community and as I talk to people into the community to let them know about the importance of being their best healthcare advocate, using that one tool that is so powerful when it comes down to asking and requesting things for them, for their health, for the betterment of their health. So that's what I do. And so I use that C.H.L.M.S acronym. I stand proudly on their backs, on their shoulders, and I am passionately driven to make sure that I can get to our community. And when I say our community, yes, I am talking about the African American community. I'm also talking about women because that's another community that I belong to, is a female community. And I'm talking about the disabled because I have health challenges that I currently deal with that makes me a part of that population. So all those three communities that mean so much to me, I'm passionately driven to make sure that they, in fact, are able to not just get access to care and not just get access to better care, but get access to best care. So as I sat with my foundation board members and I told them, hey guys, ladies and guys, this is what I want to do for African American Black History Month. It's never been done, unfortunately, because I should not, as long as we've had social media, I shouldn't be the first foundation to stand up and say, you gave us 29 days, the shortest month in the year. I'm going to use all 29 of those days. And I reached out to 29 people who I could have just went on the street corner or called the organization and said, hey, can you help? That's not what I did. I don't believe, this is what I believe. Our community has already been given the short end of the stick. Our community is already confused, baffled as such when they go to the doctor, they seek medical treatment. So I got with the best of the best. And you know what? They stepped up. They said, Sandra, what day? What we doing? Let us know. It's sad that you're the first one, but you're the first one. So you take the lead and we follow you. And not only follow you, we support you. So freely they gave of their time. They didn't have to give of their time, but freely they gave of their time. And they said, hey, what do we need to do? How do we get this together? We're here with you because you're supporting you're supporting your foundation, and most importantly, you're supporting and you're uplifting the patients. And when I say patients, as I've said all the time, patients are not just those of us that go to the doctor. Patients include your family, your friends, whoever it is that's in your corner that's listening to you or helping you by going to the doctor. And guess what, guys? Even your medical team. I have an excellent medical team that's comprised of both the traditional doctors as well as the holistic doctors. Together, they came together because I used my voice and said, this is what I want. You guys are going to work together. I'm the patient. Let me get better, right? Y'all talk all the clinical terminology I want to talk, but my medical doctor, my primary doctor, happens to be an African-American woman. And I know the struggles that she goes through every day while she's trying to be the best provider for her patients. You run it through her and she'll run it through me. That's called using your voice. And together, it came together and it's beautiful. And I love each of them for actually saying, okay, we're going to stand together and we're going to make this work. And you as well should have the capacity to ask and to do the same thing. Enough about me, enough off my soapbox. Tonight, we have been blessed. When I say blessed, I mean blessed beyond anybody's wildest thoughts and wildest imagination. We have been blessed, and we are all going to be blessed tonight to hear from Madam Ambassador Dr. Angela J. Nealy. But before I go into telling you about, letting her talk, I want to tell you what makes her the senior subject matter expert that she is, and what should make you want to actually look and really say, I need to listen. I need to stop what I'm doing and I need to listen. It's 1 hour. If it goes past 1 hour and you're like, Sandra, I gotta go, I'll catch it later. Know this. The link for the video is available. If you need the link, reach out to me. Say, Sandra, I would love to have the link. We want you to share it. Why do we want you to share it? Because in you sharing it, the patients are helped. And you sharing it, if you're a clinician, you're helped. So we want you to share it. We don't want to keep it. We don't charge. If you want to go on our website and put a small donation or something, that's fine. We're not charging you for these links this year. We're not charging you for this links. We're not even charging you for accessing the people that have been on our board. So have actually been appearing as speakers. We're not charging. They didn't charge me, so how dare I charge you, right? I mean, makes sense. Makes sense of it all, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and read her bio, and it's quite extensive. But I feel as though I need to read all of it because I want you, each of you that are listening, no matter what time you're listening, no matter what time you hear this, I want each of you to walk away saying, that C.H.L.M.S Foundation, they really brought their A game. Those speakers they had, they brought dynamite. We need to hear more from them. And perhaps we can get them to come back and speak at another time. But they're here now. So they deserve the respect of me reading their entire bio. So bear with me while I read it. Dr. Angela J. Nealy, B.S., M.S. I'm gonna let her describe all of this stuff that I'm reading to you. I could do it, but she could do it better. I'm gonna let her tell you what each of these titles are so that you get a full understanding of the fact of how many years has she spent in school and then how many years. Yeah, I'm gonna let her tell you. She has her BS, her MS, and her PhD. She's a retired science educator, a business person, a research scientist, a retired professional athlete, an Olympic coach, an Olympic trials master official, a philanthropist, and an entrepreneur who believes all people, she ain't leaving nobody out. She believes all people, both young and senior, can and will continue a life of learning. Dr. Nealy's experience as an educator has shaped the academic and athletic careers of thousands of students around the world. She has produced, coached, and mentored 7,000. That's 7,000. That's not 700. That's 7,000 students who have become physicians, dentists, doctors, lawyers, educators, professional athletes. And I'm going to add one more because of her appearing here tonight as a speaker. She's actually also taught patients how to use their voice and the importance of using their voice. So she's also a patient educator. Woo, woo! Go ahead, Dr. Nealy. Dr. Nealy earned an honorary doctorate as a doctor of philosophy from the School of Business at Trinity International University of Ambassadors, a Master of Science as an Eli Lilly Fellow from Indiana University in Science Education, as well as a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry from Fisk University with a minor in chemical engineering as a dual degree student with Fisk and Vanderbilt University. Yeah, y'all, she been busy and she still continues to be busy. Dr. Nealy was selected by former National Aeronautics and Space Administration of astronaut Dr. Mae Jemison, MD, and the executive director, Julia Robinson Nelson of the Dorothy Jemison Foundation for Excellence, to serve as a co-investigator for a 5-year grant from NASA under the umbrella of the Summer of Innovation. That was a $1.7 million grant. A STEM hosted at the Los Angeles Unified School District, the second largest in the United States, 600 students, 80 educators, 10 AmeriCorps interns, 10 AmeriCorps volunteers, 5 professional curriculum team members, and Dr. Jemison worked to communicate, cooperate, and realize academic outcomes. Dr. Nealy has also advised Dr. Jemison over the past 29 years on science, technology, engineering, and math curriculum from Rosemary Ivy League Boarding School in Connecticut, Colorado School of Mines, Colorado, and Cornell University in New York. Dr. Nealy retired from a career as a high school chemistry and botany educator, having created the botany curriculum and department at Indianapolis Ben Davis High School, also designing chemistry and microbiology curriculum for former Med Tech College nursing program in Indiana. Dr. Nealy then started a C Corporation as a plant artist, so named the Plant Whisperers, a seasonal business which exists today. She serves as the president of the board and owner of the corporation. Revenues have quadrupled since the opening of the seasonal business. Philanthropically, Dr. Nealy has assisted in raising $15 million for Fisk University in the 1980s to increase the endowment to $25 million from $10 million. 2013 until present, Dr. Nealy has donated to Fisk University at every reunion, which is every 5 years, as well as served as a National Steering Committee fund chair. She assisted in 2 fund campaigns with raising $3 million over a 30-day span and 6-month span, thus assisting the university with the increasing of alumni to 50%, which is considered a historic achievement. Dr. Nealy collaborated with then Chancellor Dr. Kathleen F. Lee, Doctor of Education of Ivy Tech Community of Indiana, and created a vertical articulation agreement with historically Black colleges and universities, Fisk University in Tennessee. $3 billion. Billion, y'all. That went up. I said million earlier. At the $1 billion mark now. Over a 30-year period in tuition expenses. Ivy Tech Community College is the largest community college in the United States at 32 campuses and 180,000 students. Finally, Dr. Nealy is an accomplished athlete, coach, and having competed as a world record track and field athlete in a pole vault. She trained to the level of contender for the 1996 Olympic trials. Dr. Nealy tried out for a pro women's tackle football athlete. Y'all, she out here doing everything. She done ran track. She done played football. Well, there was a story of your movie out a couple of years ago about a young lady that played football. They must have passed right on over Dr. Nealy, because that story should actually have had her in it because of what she did when she played football. Her performance was so amazing during the tryouts that her statistics were submitted to a historic WFA draft in Atlanta in 2002. Placing 20th in the second round, Dr. Nealy was able to run the 40-meter dash in 4.4 seconds. That's seconds. Men's NFL combine standards would have placed her on an NFL team. She and her team have a day named in their honor. It's called the Indianapolis Vipers Day, which is held on January 17th. The team also played in a Super Bowl in 2003 and finished as a runner-up. Finally, coached American hammer throw, three-time Olympian Dr. Amber J. Campbell Moore as a high schooler and continued to advise, support, and raise sponsor capital on her behalf. Dr. Nealy speaks French, German, and Spanish with an awareness of Chinese, Japanese, Latin, and Arabic. Dr. Nealy has officiated at 3 World Track and Field Championships, as well as pro meets and the Olympic trials as a nationally certified USA track and field. Culminated her official careers as a master certified. Dr. Nealy believes that your faith must be greater than your fear, and that your walk must be greater than your talk. Lastly, one dream, one team, one day, today. And with all of that being said, I know it was a lot. I know it was a lot in looking at it, but she deserves the respect of being called Madam Ambassador Dr. Angela J. Nealy. She's earned that. She's earned that, and she's coming tonight to teach, to actually educate us all. She's becoming the patient educator tonight. So sit back wherever you are, get yourself some water, have a healthy snack, and let's listen to what she needs, what she's going to tell us, which is what we all need to hear. Dr. Nealy, is on you. Before I go to you, I'm actually going to let you know I'm going to put myself on mute. So if you need anything or you have any questions to ask me, please do ask them. If you're listening tonight and you have questions, if you're on Facebook, please type them in. If you're looking LinkedIn Live, please type those questions, those comments in. We'll take it, we'll let her give her information, and then we'll stop at some point and actually get to asking the questions that you put in the chat or the comments that you put in. If once again you leave and you left, tomorrow you have some questions or whatever, please send them to us so that we can actually make sure you get an answer. Dr. Nealy, I am going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mrs. Sandra L. Washington, and our ancestors, Christopher, Miss Henrietta, Miss Louise, Miss Mary, obviously, and yourself, and the Medi-Helpz Foundation for this prestigious opportunity. My discussion will come from the backdrop of social determinants of health, SDOH. And I am a huge proponent of definitions and reading out of the dictionary and defining and making it clear so that when you walk away, run away, whatever, listen to it again, you're clear about what you've read or what you've heard. And social determinants have the ability to impact the community's health. So when we look at social determinants of health, the definition is populations by age, work, worship, play, learn, live, and are born. These items affect quality of life, outcomes, health, and functionality. Those 5 domains: 1, economic stability; 2, education access and quality; 3, healthcare access and quality; 4, neighborhood and built environment; and 5, social and community context. So I've been asked to discuss the environment and how our health is impacted. So that covers 2 out of the 5, just overlapping, if you will. And I'll cover 2 areas, each with 3 points. So I'm going to start with the definition of environment from Webster's Webster's 2, Roman numeral 2, New Riverside Dictionary, revised edition, copyright 1996. So I'm taking it from a book, a paper book that I still have in my library in my home. So the two items that are underneath that word environment are surroundings and the combination of external physical conditions affecting the growth and development of organisms. Okay, where we live. And so I have three points I want to make under here: where we live, what we are exposed to. This is my basic outline. So if you want to take notes, you want to keep your notes organized, this is how I'm looking at the three. And so the third one is how we mitigate the inequities in neighborhoods that are Black, brown, and beige. Beige looks like myself and Mrs. Washington. So, and I added that in terms of beige, so please don't be offended. Where we live, and keep in mind where we live. If you live in the city, you're going to hear sirens and construction and buses and trains and cabs and cars and all types of noise. So noise pollution, fuels, gas is spewing here and there, or the fumes from it, and diesel in the air, smoke from industrial facilities if nearby where humans live. Okay, so if you live, for example, I'm using Indianapolis. If you live downtown Indianapolis, there are some industrial areas around where you see smoke. There's trains that come by, there's smoke, there's the sound, there's the fuels. The water may not come from a pure source. So like if I were to live in Chicago, there's the lake. And so they tell me that in Chicago, the lake water or the water in Chicago there in the city is not too bad. It's pretty good news. Here in Indianapolis, it's not good at all. They're working on it. They're working on it, but it's not like, for example, Chicago water or California water, because in Chicago you have the lake, in California you have the ocean. Indiana, we're landlocked. We have a river that kind of runs through, but the whole process and the piping underneath it are so old that it's being redone, and it's taking years to do, but it is so worth it. It's not like the Great Dig in Boston that's been going on for 30 years that American taxpayers have been paying for the last 30 years. So living near a lake, clean stream, or ocean nearby helps the water to be better. And water is important in terms of the sediments that we find in water, like what I'm going to talk about in a moment, what we're exposed to. The countries where there are, so if you live in the country, what my family came from the country, they were farmers. My great-great-grandfather on my father's side was a slave who walked from South Carolina with a slave owner's daughter to what's called Lost Creek in Terre Haute, Indiana. My great-great-grandfather on my father's side was a free man. He was the first Black senator. He was also a teacher and helped create the AME church that my parents attended when they lived in Terre Haute. So those are just contrasts in terms of the country. So the country meaning farms and ranches, there's going to be reduced noise levels, reduced exposure to fuels like gas and diesel near humans who live in the country. The wind can keep the air moving up and away from the ground in the country. And there's trees in the country, so we have oxygen. But in the city, it is warmer in the city. And the buildings, the big buildings, cement buildings and the metal and all of that, block the air, and so the air gets stagnant. And so the air quality, in larger cities, including Indianapolis, while it's a small city, still has that same issue. There are no trees, that of a large magnitude in a city, whereas you find in the country. So that keeps that oxygen going. Because, when you talk to your plants, people think you're crazy. But when you talk to your plants, they're releasing oxygen to you, and you in turn are giving the excess carbon dioxide that has collected in your body. What helps them grow? But it creates issues with us if we don't have proper oxygen, clean oxygen, air, I should say clean air, but oxygen in the air. And then number two, what are we exposed to? Well, from the Healthy People 2030, which you can Google, okay, Healthy People 2030 speaks to the environment and how it impacts the community's health. The goal of this program is to reduce the exposure to the following items. Okay, and you can Google these or look in your dictionary or whatever you have, exposure encyclopedias if you still have them, probably not. But bisphenol, Bisphenol. It's an aromatic organic compound. Aromatic means it's a circle of carbons, 6 of them. Okay, and then there are things substituted on it. And so it's called phenol because we have hydroxy, OH, big OH, attached to these 2 aromatic compounds. And there's some acetone. Okay, and that's called bisphenol. That substance is what makes up our plastic drinking water bottles now. It used to be terephthalate, and I'm butchering the word, but I'll go back to it. Terephthalate perfethalate was originally what bottles were made out of, like 40 years ago. A Dow Chemical used to make them. Now it's bisphenol. Bisphenol has, as I said, a component of acetone. Acetone is the substance when you take off your fingernail polish remover, it's a 10% reduction of the 100% of acetone. Acetone is a part of what makes the plastic that your water is in. So when you go to buy a plastic bottle, it says made with bisphenol. It's different. It's better than the original one. It's better, but it's still not best. Okay. Perchlorate, big C, little L-O-4, perchlorate. It's a compound found to compose most ionic perchlorates, which doesn't mean anything to you. Most ionic perchlorates are commercially produced. That it becomes important because we talk about commercially produced. Salt, commonly used as oxidizers. That means it blows things up. For pyrotechnic devices, for the ability to control static electricity in food packaging. So when you buy packaged foods in the store, this substance perchlorate is a part of that. Chlorate, Cl, chlorine is, and the same chlorine we put in pools to clean it out is also in excess in this food packaging that you buy and you eat the food out of it. Additionally, they've been used in rocket propellants, fertilizers, as bleaching agents, in paper and textile industry. So those are things that you're exposed to from the perchlorate side of business. Perchlorate contamination of food and water endangers human health, primarily affecting the thyroid gland, what we call the butterfly. And the thyroid gland is the one that helps keep your immune system intact and keeps you well. The thyroid gland is what typically people want to eradicate in women more so first and then men, but then you have issues the rest of your life when you do that. So I always tell people, have a second look, have a second thought about them when they say they want to take out your whole thyroid gland. Not a good idea in my estimation. Then we go to lead. Lead, we find Pb, capital P, little b. There's two forms of a +2 and a +4. That means it loses electrons to bond to items. That's part of what's in the water. When I was talking about bad water, lead is a devastating and persistent neurotoxin. That means it gets in your system, and from a neural pathways in your brain, it blocks flows. And so now you don't function like you once did because you have lead. So lead was in paint before 1970s in homes. Bad news. And we'll talk about that as we go forward in a minute. That accumulates in your soft tissues and your bones. It damages the nervous system, which I just said. It interferes with the function of biological enzymes. Enzymes speed things. Enzymes don't speed things up, but they allow for example, the breakdown of certain foods in your system. Like, I can't have chicken anymore. I don't have the enzymes in my system to break it down to leave my body. If it sits in your body, it causes cancer. So an enzyme is important in terms of your biological function. Causing neurological disorders, I just said, ranging from behavioral problems to brain damage, also affects general health, your heart, cardiovascular, and renal, that's your kidneys. Okay, all of my sourcing I'm taking from Wikipedia, which 10, 15 years ago wasn't accepted, but now it is. Mercury, Hg, capital H, little g, 2+. Exposure to mercury and mercury-containing organic compounds. Organic means you're made of carbon. You're made of carbon. You're organic. Inorganic means it does not have carbon. Okay, carbon is something when you burn something. Carbon is one of the things that's in the soil that helps the soil become fertilized and function. So, containing organic compounds is toxic to, again, the nervous system, the immune system, your kidneys, humans and animals. Mercury poisoning can result from exposure to water-soluble forms of mercury. What does that mean? Mercury, like we used to use them, not now as much, in dental, the amalgam. Amalgam is a mixture of elements, but mercury was one of them. Mercury, like in the old thermostats in your house, that liquidy stuff they told you not to play with because it melts in your hand because the melting point is so low, 98.6, 37 degrees Celsius. Okay. We also look at it in terms of mercuric chloride or methyl mercury, either directly or through mechanisms of magnification. That means that too much of a bad substance comes into your little hand and makes you imminently sick. Instead of a little bit, it's too much, and it overrides your body. So mercury is used in thermometers, barometers, manometers, sphygmomanometers. That's the item that they used to use to take your blood pressure. Okay. Float valves, mercury switches, mercury relays, fluorescent lamps. So when you're in watching a basketball game and they turn the lights off and then they tell you it's going to be another 10 minutes before these lights can come on, that's because the mercury has to heat up and has to heat up the fluorescent part of the light in order for the light to come on. Well, you're being exposed. And other devices. Although concerns about the element's toxicity have led to the phasing out of such mercury-containing instruments, it remains in use in scientific research applications. So that means when I used it, and an amalgam, which I talked about in your teeth when your fillings were used with an amalgam for dental restoration in some locales. It is also used in fluorescent lighting. I just talked about that. If you're going to a basketball game, that's the premier place where you're going to find the lighting. Electricity passed through mercury vapor and a fluorescent lamp produces shortwave ultraviolet light, which is what I was just describing before this, which then causes the phosphor in the tube, long tube you see up in the ceiling, to fluoresce or to bring brilliant light. Well, mercury is a part of that process. You're being exposed to that when you go to facilities that use that. The next substance, okay, in this whole study of trying to get rid of these items is arsenic, capital A, little s. The primary use of arsenic is in alloys of lead. For example, car batteries, ammunition. So you're exposed to when you get in your car, and then if you have guns and you have ammunition, you're exposed to it there. Arsenic is a common dopant or in semiconductor electronic devices, which is really on the electric level. It's inside there. And if you're around using semiconductors all the time, you're going to be exposed. It also is a component of compound semiconductor and gallium arsenide. Gallium is another soft metal, just like mercury, and it melts in your hand just like mercury. It's absorbed immediately into your hand. Because you are a porous membrane, your whole body is your skin is the largest organ of the body, but it's also very porous. It absorbs everything. That's how you're able to get sick. Okay. Arsenic and its compounds, especially the trioxide, that means 3 O's, okay, are used in the production of pesticides, treated wood products, herbicides, insecticides, all those things you see when you go into the home and garden part of Home Depot. All of that stuff can be bad news, especially if you have a compromised immune system or just even somebody who doesn't have it. These applications are declining with increasing recognition of the toxicity. That means the stuff that makes you sick and is bad of arsenic and its compounds. Paint used to be made with arsenic. So a few species of bacteria can use arsenic compounds as respiratory metabolites. That means it's good for that part, but it's not necessarily good for you in everyday application. Trace quantities of arsenic are an essential dietary elements in rats, hamsters, goats, chickens, and presumably other species. So if you eat chicken or goat, keep in mind what you're being exposed to. Keep that in mind. A role in human metabolism is not known. However, arsenic poisoning occurs in multicellular life if quantities are larger than needed. Arsenic contamination of groundwater. So that was, I was talking about water, and I was talking about whether your water is good or if it's bad. So you've got 2 levels of water. You've got a level of water just below the surface of the earth, and then a few 20 feet down, there's another form of water. If we can access that, that's pure water, but the water closest to the surface has been exposed to, as we've talked about previously, arsenic and a series of other substances. So that's when we talk about clean water. The United States Environmental Protection Agency, okay, states that all forms of arsenic are a serious risk to human health. The United States Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry ranked arsenic as number 1 in its 2001 priority list of hazardous. Now it's 2024 and we're still talking about this. Substances at Superfund sites. Arsenic is classified as a group A carcinogen. That means you're going to get cancer. Carcinogen means you're going to get cancer, not just from smoking, but from your environment, from your water, from your soil, from the paint, from depending upon the age of your building. How we mitigate the inequities in neighborhoods that are Black, brown, and beige versus our European counterparts. Not a simple nor easy answer. Where older buildings from before 1970s are still standing and people inhabit those, there is arsenic, lead, and mercury in those components which constructed those buildings. So if a family who happens to be low income and happens to be a part of the Black, brown, and beige community moves in because it fits the family's budget, they will be exposed to these components. Thus, affordable housing in neighborhoods across the spectrum of income, where a reality this would begin to mitigate the issue. Meaning, if we could put affordable housing in a neighborhood like, for and you've heard about Carmel, Indiana, here in Indianapolis, that's a high-end financial background. But if we could put affordable housing there and teach people how, to live in a home and in a dwelling, not everybody does, but we have to. That's another piece too. New construction is the answer, but affordable housing based on affordability continues to be an issue. Okay. Peace. This is the other part of the conversation. Peace. Webster's dictionary I referred to, the definition, there's a series of items. The absence of hostilities as war. A treaty or agreement ending hostilities. A state of harmony as between persons, concord. A state of security under the law, disturbance of the peace. Freedom from disquieting feelings and thoughts, serenity. That's the general definition of peace. And so now we talk, well, how do we have peace? How do we have peace here in our country and across the world? Well, there's some components here, and I broke it into three components. Number one, world peace. The war between Israel and Hamas Palestine, which began October 7th, 2023, has decimated 25,000 plus humans, and it was children focused. We call that a genocide. There's the genocide, there's the war in Ukraine before, and then there's the genocide that's going on in the Congo right now as we speak. So we have to look at it from a world perspective, and what are we willing to do? And it can't always be based on money and who lives and who dies and who's the most important. I think we have to look at it from a human perspective. 7 billion, 8 billion people on the planet. Number two, inner peace, spiritual peace. I refer to the Bible for books from the Old and New Testament, and I use the King James Version. And here are a couple that I referenced that talks about peace. That you can look at. Numbers 6, 24 through 26. And it begins with the Lord bless. The Lord makes his face. The Lord lifts up. Psalm 122. The peace of Jerusalem. I was glad when they said unto me. Isaiah 9, 2 through 7. The people that walk. That's in the Old Testament. The New Testament. John 14, 25 through 27. These things have I spoken. Romans 5, 1 through 11. Therefore, being justified by faith, we have peace with God. Ephesians 2, 14 through 18, for he is our grace. Philippians 4, 4 through 9, rejoice in the Lord always. Excuse me. Whether I look at the Quran from Islam or the Torah from Judaism, the first 5 books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, all make up the Quran and Torah. So when we talk about peace from those items I just suggested, we also are covering Islam, we're covering Judaism. If we don't know that, now we know. And then societal peace. This is my last and this is my closing. Societal peace. Here's what I'm saying. It is not the end all do all. Put the guns down. Open your hands or bump fists, but talk to each other. Negotiate. Agree to disagree. Learn more than just English. Stop thinking you are the center. You do not know. If you do not know the her story and history of your name, that's a concern. It's all you know.
Thank you so much, Madam Ambassador, Dr. Nealy. I do want to ask you some questions because I don't see any comments or anything coming through just yet, but I do want to ask you some questions in reference to what we just talked about, what you just talked about, and what you just covered. When it comes down to that environmental piece of the factor of environment in the social determinants of health, and it comes down to the Black, brown, and beige communities, it comes down to us. And I'm glad you said that beige communities. I was born and raised in on the East Coast in East Orange, but my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, is from the Caribbean islands.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I take a lot from her. I take that beigeism from her. But in talking about that factor, yes. As we were talking earlier, I said, these factors, these social determinants of health factors, they keep every 10 years we have we have a healthy people. Right now we are healthy people 2030. Before that was healthy people 2020. Before that, it was Healthy People 2010. They keep regurgitating these factors. And the one factor that a lot of us in the community that I live in or that I'm a part of don't really focus in on is this. The factor of environmentalism, it means you have access to clean water. But if we're living in communities where there is no clean water, and so we look at environmental peace, we don't have clean water. We still have these really old buildings that no one's going in to refurbish. No one's going in to clean up these old buildings and what's in these old buildings. How do we, and so of course, when that environmental factor is not good in your psyche, and it gets in your system, it makes you a less rounded person, and it weighs heavily on you and how you interact with others. So is it a possibility that at some point in time the powers that be might take a look at all the crime that's going on in this country, all the bad water, access to bad water, all these things that are tied to environmental, to see just if we straighten this out, if we gave them hope, or even ourselves, if we set about, those of us that could do it, if we set about going ahead and making sure there was clean water or there was access to clean things. If we did that, would that make a difference when it comes to the environmental and peace aspect, or no?
No, it does, and it is. And let me go back and correct myself on when the water bottle that really bothered me. And I did research on it for Dow. It's PET, polyethylene terephthalate, and that was what the bottles were originally made from. Okay, and then we changed over to bisphenol. I had to correct myself. That drove me nuts that I couldn't say it. It's been a minute since I did that research 40 years ago. But that was a change too because of the environment, the disposal of such. Those bottles made from that substance, the polyethylene terephthalate, weren't breaking down. So they're in the environment, they're in the water, they're in the soil. And now we're building homes on top of those items. And over time, something's called half-life. That means something breaks down every 5 years, 10 years, 2 years, or whatever, but it's still there. And so now it's in that soil, right? And then we build a home on that soil. And then we build a home that's not $20 million. We build a home that's a couple $100,000. And we market it to a mass of people who we think can afford it, which oftentimes is us, beige, black, and brown folk. But it was built on land that was not in good condition. So now we look at generations, 10 years later, 20 years, 30 years later, and there's incidences of cancer because those substances were in those soils. And then you say, well, how do you change that? Well, you look at politics, and we know we don't like politics. We know how, if you if you give some money under the table, that person will do whatever to change the law. But everybody doesn't have that kind of money, and nor is that the right way to do it. But when we craft a law, so when your state representative crafts a law, or you're in touch with your state representative, I'm speaking specifically here in Indiana, specifically Indianapolis, crafts a law, it should be crafted for the benefit of the whole, not based on economic background, but based on, as we just talked about, 2030, how do we make it better? And you were talking about 2020 and 2010 and, 1950 and all of that, and making it better for the masses. But it starts there with the laws and enforcing those laws. But it also starts with the lobbyists. And the lobbyists have an interesting way of how they do things. But if you can get lobbyists who really have the human interest at heart and really lobby for the best of the best economically, okay, and non-economically, meaning, everybody's not in the 3%. Okay, I think 5 people in the world have enough billions for the money for the rest of the world. And so the other 97% are living on small to nothing. I mean, when you look at, for example, a billionaire makes what? I don't know, $1 million every day. No, it's even more than that. $20-30 million every day. And us as normal people won't ever see that in our lifetime. So they can afford to build a multi-billion-dollar aircraft to live on, while we're living on a land that I just described has contaminants that over 10 years, 20 years, 30 years of generations is going to annihilate and shorten the telomeres, and the chromatids and the chromosomes and the DNA and RNA in a whole generation of people. So it goes back to, the legislative part of it. How do we craft a bill that changes dynamics and changes it forever? And how do we do that for people who don't make 100,000 and 200,000, 300,000 a year? So I present that as an option. That doesn't mean that that's the only option, but I present that as an option.
But you know what? It's a good option, which leads back from the fact that you brought up something that is very, very important that all of us should be doing, especially those of us that are of any color, or have any type, live in an area where it's under resourced, or a vulnerable community, or a disabled community. We really need to be exercising that right called voting. We really need to, not just vote for the president, vote at your local elections, vote
Yes,
for your city, your state, the country. I mean, just keep voting. Doesn't make a difference. Some people say, hey, it doesn't make a difference. But you know what? If you don't vote, you don't even give that choice. You don't even bring to the table that option of it making a difference or not. Um,
exactly.
if we come together, especially in our communities, if
Yeah,
we come together and we come together around a single topic, and then start breaking those topics down, where we can then go into round tables and get to the gist of it so that it's addressed, it will help us. But so many times in our community, healthcare, finances, whatever, um, we got so much competition. Competition. I mean, I wanted to say something else, but I'm keeping it professional. We got so much competition going on, and it doesn't make sense. It hurts
right,
all of us. I mean,
right.
it really hurts us all as a community of people. We cannot get ahead if we don't collaborate. If every time Susie gets an A or an apple or something, you looking at her like, why she got that? How come she got that? And instead of being happy and asking her, my mom told me a very long time ago was something that I was doing and somebody else was doing it. And she saw my demeanor, and I was in my teens. She saw my demeanor. And at that point in time, she stopped it. And she told me on that day, she said, don't you ever be mad at what someone else has.
That's right.
Because you can go out there and get that same thing. You
Exactly.
you can get it on your own, make your circle of friends the same type of, that want something out of life that will push you and encourage you to go out there and get those things that you need. Why is that important when we're talking about environment and we're talking about peace? Because our environment is us.
Right.
Our environment is a combination of our bodies. What goes into our bodies, we'll probably be long gone when it comes up. But that's going into our systems. When we have babies, the babies are carrying it. They're going to
Mhm.
carry it forth. It's not something that comes into us and then just leaves. Because all of a sudden we got access to clean water. Well, in reality, there's states that, you know, don't have clean water, haven't had clean water for a very long time. We
Totally.
went in there and gave them a couple of $1,000s worth of water, and we say that water is safe to drink, and it's not. It's not
Yes.
safe to drink.
Yep.
It's not safe to bathe. But if we, as a community of people, especially those of us that know better, if we don't start talking to those that, we think, well, let me just give them this information. It might not help them. They might not hear it, but let me give it to them anyway. If we look at them and say, well, you know what? They don't make the money. They can't afford this. They can't afford that. We're hurting ourselves. We are literally hurting ourselves. And we've got to, at some point in time, we have to stop. And we have to look at the picture and see the picture for what it is.
Yeah.
Like Madam Ambassador just said, I do. I'm not even sure who amongst us that's listening to this tonight has $1 million that can go, or $1 billion that can go build them a hideaway home where nothing, absolutely nothing gets into it, right?
Right.
So we're
Right.
all stuck here living on this, earth, living on this ground, taking in the bad pollutants, and sure, things have gotten better in some areas, but not in all areas has
Right.
it gotten better. I live in the inner city of Chicago. Where I live out on my street, is it clean? It's clean, right? But we live right where we live on our block is like maybe 15 steps away from the railroad tracks. Where I'm constantly calling our aldermen and saying, you need to get the garbage people out here because they need to get this up.
Yep.
So we're living that close to all these bad environmental things that we got to breathe in every day when we go out. Where do you see yourself at?
Right.
And even in the best communities, even in, the suburban areas, the ultra suburban areas, they still have issues, environmental issues. They might not have as many, but but they have them. And so, Madam Ambassador Nealy, I do want to ask you another question, and it's
Right.
this: we have housing, like you just mentioned, we have housing that's going up, and it's going up on top of bad soil, right? But in the suburbs or in the suburban areas where there is these homes are still going up, is that to say that they're going up on soil that's not at one bit contaminated?
Well, I would tell you it's now the 2020s and 2024, and what was done, in 1970 and what was done in 1910, and you look at the population has increased tremendously, and you look at industrial production has increased tremendously, and so we have to make room. And the decisions that were once made in 1910 and 1950 and 1970, now people are more sophisticated and speak out and require, and there are more things in place now. The USDA and the Food and Drug Administration and EPA and all of that, Environment Protection Agency. And once what was allowed then is not allowed now. For example, I'll give you an example. Here in Indianapolis, they are building a new soccer facility for our soccer team. And the gentleman who owns the soccer team is pretty, he's pretty well off. He's not doing bad at all. So he was able to buy the land to have this stadium that's being built. But you know what they found? They're now required, to do soil tests and those kinds of things. So they can't just build like they once did. They have to make modifications to the soil and to the land. Well, what they have found now are human remains in this area where they want to build this soccer field. So that has halted the construction because they keep finding bones from ancestors. And it is our understanding those bones are African American ancestors. That would suggest that it is a burial site. That suggested it was, I'm going to say, an official or unofficial cemetery. So now they can't do anything, but because the laws that are enacted now, until all of those remains are taken out, absolutely all of them. Some are human, maybe there were some dogs, cats, I don't know, and they have to be analyzed, and they have to be identified as to who they are and to what generation. So that stadium might get built, but it's not going to get built today, and it's probably not going to get built this summer until all of that is done. That once was not the case. That once was not the case. And so now when they're building homes and they're building it on land, depending upon the laws of the state. And I think that's the other part we have to recognize too. The laws of the state, of the 50 states, we have to look at what are those laws, how antiquated, old are those laws, how new are those laws, who's following the rules of EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. Here in Indianapolis, the city, the Indiana the health board here, all of that. Who's following that? Well, now there's more people who, like yourself and nonprofits, who are saying, oh, no, wait, hold on. They're bringing it to light. They're writing about it. People are now reading about it. And so I use that as an example. That one's being halted. Are these homes that are being built on clean and clear land? It all depends on if they're enforcing the laws. And are the people around enforcing those laws? Are they making it and writing articles that people are paying attention to that's halting, like the example of this soccer stadium, halted because of what they found? And that's a question that has to be answered and asked in all cities. I'll give another example. In my own neighborhood, I've been living in my condo for going on 25, 26 years. Originally, when I bought the condo, there were more Jewish people, more European folk, less African American, less Latino. In fact, no Latino. Now it's totally different. There are 2 apartment complexes, and there's a new condominium community that was built ahead of where we are. So I live in a condominium community, 280 units. Ahead of us is another condominium community that was built about 15, 20 years ago, and those condos were double in price of what I paid for mine. Okay, now mine is triple what it once was. And so I get calls every day because they want to buy it. Well, on the other side of the street are 2 apartment complexes, one that's Latino, that is perfectly well manicured, and one that, again, used to be mixed nationalities, races, but is now mainly African American. So they have new owners now. This was about a year ago when this started happening, and they just let the place go and tripled the rent to drive out the individuals that live there. So people were paying $300 for an electric bill, $300 for a gas bill, plus $1,200 or $1,400 for their rent. They weren't fixing anything. This was a year ago. And I drove by and I knew some people that lived there. My sister used to live there 30 years ago when she lived in Indianapolis. She lives in California now. The trash had not been taken in a month or two. A month or two. This was March, April, May. So the warm weather was coming. The grass hadn't been cut in 2 or 3 months. So the grass was as tall as me. The trash is, all out in the street everywhere. The stairs that they walk up to go into each of their apartment, dwellings was so broken they could hardly walk up. I could go on and on. The boarded up windows. The pool hadn't worked in 3 years. The clubhouse, was closed down. The place where the kids played, the playground, was just weeds as tall as me. And so I have, because of my title, United Nations Peace Ambassador, NGO, ECOSOC, I made a phone call to the deputy mayor, who I happen to have known. Don't you know, the next day that grass got cut? And the next week until that grass was manicured like it should have been. And then the trash, I called the health department, the Indianapolis Health Department. I know the director and my title again. Don't you know that trash got picked up that next day and every day after that?
And this is my point in this. All of that you just mentioned is all an environmental nightmare.
Exactly.
That causes these kids, our children, our young adults to actually mindfully, mentally, with them. Mentally, right? They go out and they strike out in the worst kind of ways. They hurt themselves and they hurt others.
Yes.
And it's all based on the fact that it is coming from the environment that they're in.
The environment that they're in, yes.
So it shouldn't take somebody to go and say, I'm this person and you need to get this straight.
And the people,
it shouldn't. They see it. They see it every day. They know it's there. And because nobody is using that most important tool that they own, which is their tool, which is their mouth, it's not getting fixed. I appreciate for you for what you were able to do when using your title to get that done. But come on, people, we got to do better. We don't have a choice. We have to do better.
Let me say more to the story. It's not that the residents weren't calling. It's that they weren't paying attention to the residents, Black and brown and beige community. They weren't listening to the residents. That was the sad part. So because I had connections and I had a title, and I knew the people that I was calling and had known them for 10 or 15 years. And all the other residents had been trying and trying. And I said, let me make a phone call. And so then they finally responded, like immediately. And I called my congressman, but I had worked with his grandmother and Andre Carson, Congressman Andre Carson. His grandmother was also a congresswoman. She is the one who created the opportunity for Rosa Parks to get the Freedom Medal. Okay, Julia M. Carson, absolutely brilliant woman. I'd worked with her 20 years before, 25 years before that at a school where I was teaching. And so I continued the relationship with her son. So when I called, they gave me resources and they helped move the needle tremendously. And so all of a sudden, everything, all of a sudden they started to paint the buildings and to replace the stairwells and do all that stuff. And so now I notice that trash never gets missed picking up. That grass never gets missed cutting. This is a year later. Because they're probably thinking, oh, I'm gonna call, I'm gonna do something. You're absolutely right. And you're also going to listen to the residents. So now when the residents call the health department because an apartment isn't being taken care of right there in the building where they are, they don't hesitate anymore. They go immediately. Because they know the fines are excessive, for a residential, it's $1,000 a day if you don't clean up something on your property in a home. In the apartment, I think it's 10, 20, $30,000 a day if you don't do what you are supposed to do. And so the new owners, it's a guy by the name of Dela Cruz. He's putting in $250 million in this community. Now, mind you, the community now, I'm a block from the International Center in Indianapolis. So all the different nationalities are there in that area that used to be what's called Lafayette Square Mall, that used to be owned by the Simons. The Simons own all the malls in the United States. The Simons are from Indianapolis. I went to high school with the Simons. Okay. They own the Pacers and everything else they can find, right? But they sold the mall. And so the mall sat and it began to deteriorate. So he came in and he repainted the mall and cleaned up the drive area and all of that. And he started doing other things. All of a sudden he stopped. Well, the apartment complex was a casualty of that. But now that somebody is watchdogging them and saying, you're not going to do that here. I noticed the street, when it's time to pave the street or fix the holes, we're not the last, we're on the first. So they know that somebody is there, and now they listen to the residents as well, because those fines, like I said before, are heavy. And so they've begun to renovate that apartment complex. But that's just one in the city of Indianapolis. There are many other pockets on what's called the east side of Indianapolis that are getting attention as well. But that same kind of thing was happening. And yes, the water is affected. And yes, the buildings are older. And so gentrification, as you well know, takes those older buildings because they have the money and they gut the entire building. And I guess they treat the soil. I'm going to assume they would have been required to do such. So now that old building that had all of the, the arsenic in the wallpaper and in the paint and the magnesium and all of the old fixtures and I'm sorry, the mercury and all of that, So now it's a total different building. It's an older structure, but it's been redone. It's been gutted because of money that could have been done just as easily for somebody who didn't have the money. And the Black and brown communities, need that help. But the other side of the picture, I'm sure you've heard, Mike Epps is from Indianapolis. And you've heard during the pandemic, he bought all of the houses on the block. The house that he once got evicted from, he bought every last house on that block and owns all those homes and renovated absolutely all of them. And so they're all in perfect condition. So those are just.
And this is the thing before we close up. And I do want to once again thank you so much for taking your time to come and to talk to us, because we need to, our patients need to be educated, not just our patients, but it's when I say our patients, it's all patients.
Yeah.
But especially during Black History Month, it's important that we highlight what negative impact everything has on the health and well-being of the African American patient. And then, it's not 40 years ago where we didn't have the internet. We now have the internet, and we need to start using it for social media. If you live on a block and you've been on that block for 10 years and you're suffering because you found out there's lead in the building or your grass ain't getting cut, get a camera, start snapping some pictures start putting those pictures up on social media so that they can start paying attention to you. And
Exactly.
I tell people this all the time. It's not my responsibility, and the gift that God gave to me is to go out and teach. I say each one, teach one, reach one,
Which one?
right? But I cannot make somebody do something they don't want to do.
Right.
So unfortunately, because there's still people that are sitting back to learn this information that don't do anything but sit on it, there's not much that we can do but
Right.
continue to put it out there. People, I said this every night since we started this Black History Month, and I'll continue to say it for the next 17 days. There is not a soul coming to save us. If you think that you're going to sit there or you're going to do something and you need help and somebody's going to be able to read your mind, and even when they read your mind, they're going to help you, you're sadly mistaken. And it's your life. You get one life. Once you leave this world, you ain't coming back. You're not coming back. They haven't figured out a way to get you to come back yet. And I'm gonna be really honest with you, Madam Ambassador. I don't really think I want to come back.
No, I think God sent me here to do my thing. Yeah, send us here to do our thing. We've done our thing, and we can go home and rest. And I'm fine with it.
Right.
I've
But
had
what
an
I do want
amazing life.
Right. But what I do want to do is I want to leave a legacy of people that care, of people that are looking out for each other, of people that know that they need to be on top of things, that know that if they're in a bad environment and they're smelling that bad environment, and that bad environment is getting all in and up underneath your skin. It's not just damaging you. It's it's a whole cadre of people out there that are going through the same thing you go through. And I know, I said I was going to go, but I do know that there are certain areas. I have a friend of mine who seems to be losing a lot of her family members. And she said, Sandra, I'm not sure why they're all passing away. They all lived in the same neighborhood. And I said, it's the environment. It's the environment. They're all coming down with different types of cancers. It's the environment.
What kind of cancer are they coming down with?
It's all different kinds of cancers that they're coming down with. But they're younger and they're losing their life.
In terms of a study, I probably would tell you to have them look at that housing. What are the ages of those homes?
I'm not sure how. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what the ages are, but the people that are passing away are like in their 50s and 60s, and they all live in the same community.
Okay, so I would say look at what year were all those homes built?
Mm-hmm.
What were those homes built on? What was on that land before they built those homes? Look at the water source. Is it far away from, Lake Michigan, or is it close to those? And so you're saying that in the last 2 years they passed away, or the last 10 years?
No, in the last few years, like 3-4 years ago, but they're like dropping like flies right about now.
You mean ever since the pandemic and the vaccine?
Right.
Oh, well, I don't want to get sued, but
yeah. But this is the thing, though. But still, even after the pandemic, they're still like starting to drop off like flies, and they all came from the same neighborhood.
But it only happened. It only started happening in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Since the pandemic.
Right. Around that time.
Since the required vaccination.
Right.
Okay. Well, you have to look. You'll have to. Again, I don't want to get sued by any of those makers of the vaccine, but I think you need to look at some realistic components to that. Look at the blood type of those families. Look at which one of the 3 vaccines. How many prescription drugs were in each of those individuals on? If they were on at least one, I would look at those kinds of things
and see what they have in common. Yeah. I mean, and that's a disclaimer. It's not that we're giving, we're talking, and this is a conversation. This is not saying, well, that's where it's coming from. That's for sure where it's coming from. This is telling you what we've been telling you since day one. People think please think about what's going on with your life, with your family, with your health, with the health of your community.
Yeah.
It all makes a difference. So just continue to think of it. If you need to reach out, please do. We have Carolyn Comey here. She's saying hello, everyone. Hello, Miss Carolyn. It's just think about it. Take some time to think about what you're seeing happening around you, where you live at, what are you seeing in the neighborhoods in which you live, what needs to actually be cleaned up, what needs to actually be fixed, what needs to actually just be torn down, and heck, y'all clean up the area
Right,
and
right,
build all over
right,
again.
right. Look at your food source, look at your water source, look at your industrial, what industries are around where those homes are built, and are those industries still, functioning? And if they're not functioning, but those buildings and everything that's related to that is still in the ground, those are things to research. And because, like you said before, because we have the internet now, we have social media. There's so many tools now that are available. And again, like we said before, and I've said before, your state representative, your legislators, your congressman,
You gotta get busy. You
yeah,
can't.
your environmentalist, tap into what kind of research have they done in the last 1 year, 2 year, 3 or 4 year, 5 year, whatever. Go to the library. I mean, there's so many options, but you can't continue to be lackadaisical about your health and accept that that's okay. I don't drink city water. I drink
Not
bottled.
even so much that that's okay, but that's the normal. Oh, that's normal for people.
No, it is
No,
not.
it's not normal. It's
It's not
really that's
normal.
not normal.
It's not the normal. You've allowed it to be the normal, but it is not the normal. And you
Right.
you have the ability, to change the direction, but you have to want to change the direction and take ownership of your environment, your life, and your community. Because you're right, it affects black and brown and beige, but it affects other folk who live there as well, who
Yeah.
have lived there for a long time.
Yeah.
So
And it would definitely be in everybody's interest, no matter what color you are, no matter what your social economic condition is. It's in everybody's best interest that we come together, that we pull together. These conversations that we're having. Well, what does that have to do with me? It has a lot to do with you, because while you're thinking that it has nothing to do with you,
right,
it most certainly does.
it
It,
does.
it
It
most
does.
certainly does. And it's going to continue to impact you in, negative, positive way, but it's going to continue to impact you
Right.
if you're not doing what you need to do.
I,
We
I'm t-
can't, we can't sit on the sidelines no longer. And
no.
before you go further, Madam Ambassador Doyle, I do want to say Sheree Reed is here, and she is
Hi.
saying this was an interesting conversation and definitely something to think about, especially speaking on our environments.
Absolutely.
There
Absolutely.
it is.
It is. Absolutely.
There it
And don't be afraid of the conversation, and don't be afraid that science wasn't your best subject or math wasn't your best subject, because you have us as a resource, and reading is fundamental. And read a little bit here, a little bit there, and ask questions, and we're a resource for you. We're not gonna talk to you in a demeaning way and not answer your questions. We're gonna explain it to you. As I said before we were on camera, we'll explain it to you till you get it. I mean, when I taught chemistry, college prep chemistry, one of the hardest parts of all of the chemistry I taught first semester versus second semester was the balancing of equations. I had to teach that in an 18-week period of time. I had to teach it 7 times, till they got it and they understood it before the final. And that's just the nature of science. But once you get it, you're never going to lose it. But you can't continue to be afraid of it. For example, I don't eat pork or beef. I don't eat chicken. I drink water. I don't drink soda pop. Haven't for 40 some years. And I don't have the issues that people my age. I'm 63. I don't have a problem telling you that. I'm 63, grateful to be there as an elder. And I don't have the issues. I'm not on any prescription drugs. I do have asthma, but I manage it. You know, I don't do things that they're gonna acerbate it, because I want to continue to be an athlete. And as I told you before, I'll be in Chicago next month running in the indoor Masters track and field track meet, and running the 60 meter and the 200. People my age don't run that fast, don't run at all.
Hmm.
So your environment, your food, water, all of that. And I tell people, if I give another example, soda pop. Soda pop is nothing but phosphoric acid. Phosphoric acid is the same main ingredient that we put in our toilet bowl to clean our toilets. But you drink it every day. I can't function without it. Yeah, well, you keep drinking it. You don't have to worry about functioning without it because you won't be around to drink it. I mean, I don't know any other way to say it. Water, 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 water. You're water. You wake up drunk because you're dehydrated, and then you drink a cup of coffee instead of eating food, and now you get more dehydrated. Now you're even more drunk, and then you get in the car and you drive. I use this example all the time. And you get in the car and you drive to work and you're drunk, right? In a figurative point of view, and then you get to work and you can't function, and you fall asleep. 2 hours after you get there. So, our food, our water, what we do, how we function. We don't want to exercise. We have to exercise. I don't care if you just walk.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have Leah Garcia that also is into the comment, and she's saying that's right. We have to take ownership of our health.
Yes.
And we most certainly do. We have to take ownership of our health. And in taking ownership of our health, we have to consider the piece of the environment. The environment means so much more than what we think it does. And it plays a major role in our health. It really does, in our mental and our physical health.
Absolutely.
And so we have to consider that as we, look at ways on building sustainability into what we're doing here in this country, in the various states. We just have to. We have to keep our eyes on the prize. We have to keep helping those that can't help themselves or are not able to help themselves, but they want to get help. We have to keep putting it out there. And if we don't, it's going to be lost. And when it's lost, there goes our future.
Yeah.
Right there. Who's gonna be around in our future? It is just that real.
Yeah.
Madam Ambassador Dr. Nealy, I thank you so very much for spending the time that you spent with us, giving us the information, giving us the scientific information, and then breaking it down. Right? You didn't have to. I'm sure there was things that you could have done, but you came in, you gave of yourself, you gave your time, you freely gave of your time so that we could learn. And that's what this Black history, or as Carter G. Woodson, I was reading an article, his quote that has actually stuck with me. Why can't we call it Blacks in History? Why do we have to call it Black history? We call it Blacks in History. I'm just thinking maybe we'll get more out of it, right? Maybe we'll learn more about it because history is meant to be carried forward.
Absolutely. I'm a United Nations ambassador, and it was an African American brother who created the United Nations, Ralph Bunche, 1944. The nations, then it was 50 nations, and they weren't getting along, and World War II was coming to a close, and folk weren't talking to each other. And he said, why don't we do the United Nations? The original intent was to get people, and when I opened up the conversation, was to open their hand and, talk to each other and have a conversation and negotiate. And so now we're up to 80 nations, United Nations. I'm on the non-governmental side. So I'm attached to a 501c3, a not-for-profit. Whereas the governmental side, which you see in New York, we're still a part of that, but we're on the other side. We're under the social economic, there's 10 years, we're under the social economic council. But we still care, and we opened up about peace. We still care about the peace. And obviously we're trying to bring peace in my own neighborhood, because you start locally and then you go globally. So.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then at the end of the day, non-governmental, governmental, same thing with healthcare. This is an all hands on deck approach.
Yes.
We are all stakeholders, and as stakeholders, we all have our part, and we all have our part. I don't want to say to play. We all have our part to take in making sure that the sustainability of the best health outcomes, that we reach them. And we can if we stop competing and start collaborating and start building sustainable solutions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ms. Carolyn Coleman is telling you thank you so much. I thank you. And I'm
sure
the board, I'm sure the C.H.L.M.S Medi-Helpz board is quite appreciative of the fact that you took the time tonight to speak to us and address us when when I ask. And, you just say, Sandra, give me $500 and I'll do it. You say, sure, when do you need me there? Let's talk about a date and a time. So I thank you because, it's going to take you as a leader and other leaders to come together to, give us guidance and give us that mentorship and help us to make a difference.
Absolutely.
That, I
Thank you for the honor.
and I want you to have the rest of a beautiful night. I will be sending you the link. For those of you that might want the link, once again, please outreach me. I'll be happy to share this link and you can share it out because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get this word. We're trying to help our community. And the only way we can help our community is if it gets to as many people, the messages get to as many people as possible.
And I'm very findable. I'm Googleable. I reach, I'm on social media, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, the newest one, String, Threads, whatever, Clubhouse, all of them. But I'm probably most responsive on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. I'm pretty mostly active on those, more so than all the others, but I'll respond, no problem.
Thank you. And I want you to have the rest of a good night.
Yes, you too.
Thank
Have a good evening.
you. All right.
Bye-bye.